I like that song. That's great. The new song that we sang last month, that we sang this morning, was incredible. I mean, it sounded so pretty, and I just can't believe that the Lord would not be pleased with the way you sang that song as well as this song this evening. I don't know if you noticed the theme that has run through both of these songs, and that is heaven itself. So when you think about heaven, what is it that comes to your mind? What kind of picture do you see in your mind when you think of heaven? Well, you've kind of been caught cold with that question, and if you were listening to the song, or maybe if you just had some more time to think about it, you'd probably think about the same word picture that I think of when I think of heaven, and that's the word home. There's something about the word home that seems comfortable. It seems like a place that is safe and secure. Well, over in Luke, the 15th chapter there, Jesus tells a story or a parable about a young man who received his inheritance from his father very early. And it says that he goes into a faraway land, and there he squanders all the wealth in indulgent living, immoral living. And the result of that is that he finds himself at a place in his life that he certainly did not want to be. And all that time, it's my feeling that there was a call, a pull to pulling him back home, but maybe his pride was keeping him from it. But there's this pull that pulls him back home, almost like maybe a magnet would to steel, just wanting him to come back home. And he finds himself in a place where he finally has to make a decision, where he finds himself in a pig's squalor, and he's saying that I desire to even the pods that pigs are eating. And then it says, and he comes to his senses or to himself, and he says to himself, in my father's place, my home, the servants there are eating better than I. Why don't I go home, and why don't I go and just go back to where my father is? And so he does. We're not told what he's expecting, but as he nears to his home, his father obviously has been looking for him, and it says that he runs to his son. And as he runs to his son, what was the son thinking about? How is his father going to react? Is he going to rebuke him? Will he be hard on him? Well, he doesn't do any of those things. In fact, what his father does is he falls upon his son in an embrace. And he puts a robe on him and a ring on his finger. And he tells his servants, go and kill the fatted calf, because my son who was gone and lost, he's home. And he throws a big party for him. That one thing that the son wanted more than anything was tranquility back in his life. And the only place he could find that was at home. I believe that God has made our physical homes in such a way that it hints of what heaven is about. I don't know about your home. I'm not saying all homes are like this, but in most homes, in my home, we find a sense of warmth. There is a sense of security. There's a sense of safety. It's a place where I just know I belong. And we're going through the holiday season, and many of our children are coming home, or our families are coming home. Why is that? Because there's something that pulls us back home, that is something that we want to be a part of and just live within. J. Howard Payne, he wrote a fun little poem called Home, Sweet Home. Mid pleasures and palaces though we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. And almost automatically, maybe it conjures up into your mind that 1939 movie Wizard of Oz. And there Dorothy, she wakes up in her bed from having this dream about Oz, this land that she has been in her dreams, and she wakes up repeating these words over and over. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. She's went through, a lot of frightening activities. She's been through a terrifying experiences. She's met a lot of interesting beings or people, if you will, and now she's back home in Kansas. And as she wakes up from this dream, she's comforted when she realizes that she is at home and that she is cuddling in her own bed, and her family and her friends are all around him that look so much like those characters in Oz. All of a sudden, Kansas and Aunt Emma, or Aunt Em, there was something about that place that would ring those words from her. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. For Christians, we're a little bit like Dorothy. We've been going down, this yellow brick road. We're trying to make our way to heaven. And on that journey, we find ourselves going through some of the same experiences, maybe not as strange looking as what Dorothy went through, but we find ourselves going through some harrowing experiences, some frightening experiences, some sorrowful experiences. Yes, there's a lot of joy and there's a lot of happiness in there, but as we travel down the road, it's almost intuitively within us that says to us, this is not my home. The longer I live my life, the more I realize that this place is not my home. I long for heaven. I want to go to heaven. And when I listen to that song, those words, well done, as I make my way toward that place, are words of great comfort, and they inspire in us a sense of hope that causes us to push forward and to keep on pressing on until we can hear those words in heaven itself, among the angels singing, well done, good and faithful servant. John the 14th chapter in verse 1, Jesus starts those words by saying, do not be afraid. You believe in God, believe also in me. Obviously, Jesus was looking at their lives and he saw that there was something amiss in the lives of the disciples. They're frightened. He probably can see it in their body language. You can probably see it in their faces. Why are they frightened? Well, the answer to that is back in the 14th chapter. And in the 14th chapter, actually, it probably goes back to the 13th chapter as Jesus washes the disciples' feet and as he partakes of the Passover and as he institutes the Lord's Supper. In other gospel, it says that Jesus said, this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for the many for the forgiveness of sins. And when you get to the 13th chapter in verse 33, Jesus says to them, I'm going away to a place and you can't come. He's talking about his death, and I think it's ringing clear with him, probably more so now than in a lot of the 3 years that he has been walking with them, that this is going to be an ending that they did not expect. In fact, they're wondering, why can't we go with you? And finally, Peter says, Lord, listen, I will go with you even to the end. I'll even die with you. And Jesus said, Peter, will you really die with me or for me? I tell you that before the cock crows, you'll deny me 3 times. And he goes on and he says more things to him, but you could see that the atmosphere must have been tense. There must have been this frightened look in their eyes as they're hearing these things. You're going somewhere. You're giving your blood. We can't go with you. We're going to be left alone. And then he said, do not be afraid. You believe in God, believe also in me. So what is it that made them so frightened? I think it's the same things that probably frighten us as we think about our lives and the road that we are going down. Maybe it's death. It certainly did frighten them to think of Jesus dying. We've been with him 3 years. We've seen so many things, and now he's saying he's going to die. I don't think there's probably anything in the world that makes mankind more fearful or causes us to stop and become sober than the thought of that maybe one day we're going to die, or someone that we love is going to die, and it scares us so bad because we know that heaven is out there, but at the same time, we know that we're going to miss that person that we love so much, and we think about those that we're going to leave behind, and it causes us to maybe be a little bit afraid of things. But at the same time, there is heaven that is out there for us, and that's what Jesus is going to talk about here in just a little bit. Maybe it's the trials that we go through. Maybe it's the difficulties, the challenges that we have. Think about the disciples. They're sitting there and they said, you can't come with me. You're going to have to continue on this road that I have set you on. I'll be with you even to the end, but you're going to have to go on this road by yourself. And so maybe they're thinking about the challenges, the trials that are before him. Well, don't we find ourselves in the midst of trials and difficulties even in our lives to the point that we worry so much that we pull our hair or we chew our nails almost down to the nubs, and all the while, all this hair pulling, we come away with a little bit of hair and instead of character, or we come away with 5 really sore fingers rather than faith. Jesus doesn't want us to worry. He doesn't want us to be filled with anxiety as we go down the road of life and as we make our journey to heaven itself. Or maybe it's like Peter. Could you imagine what was going through Peter's mind when Jesus said to him, Lord, I'll go with you all the way to the end. I'm willing to die for you. Will you really, Peter? I'm telling you that before the rooster crows, you'll deny me 3 times. You remember in the account where he denied Jesus the 3rd time, he looks and they catch eyes with one another, Jesus and him, and it says that Peter saw it, and it says that he went away and he wept bitterly. Will there ever be a way back? Will there ever be a second chance? He's going to die, and then what's going to happen to me? Obviously, he's reaffirmed over there in John, the 21st chapter, and it has such a wonderful ending, but don't we kind of feel the same things when we go through various trials ourselves? When we go through the possibility of maybe even denying Jesus? I believe that probably all of us, or maybe most of us, if not you, I'll say I've done so, that maybe all of us in some way maybe have denied Jesus, either with our words or maybe with our deeds, maybe with our thoughts, where we know we should be going this way with Jesus, but we decide that we're going to deny him and set him aside, and we're going to go in our own direction or go our own way, and we wonder, is there a way back? I believe that probably a lot of those feelings were going through those disciples as they stood there or sat there with frightened face, and Jesus says, don't be afraid. And then he tells them something that I think will comfort them as they move towards home. And it's these words: you believe in God, believe also in me. He's talking about, a personal faith with a personal God that results in personal strength. That's where we're going to draw our strength from, is having a relationship with God and with his son, Jesus Christ. So when he says, you believe in God, believe also in me, in the Greek, it's an imperative statement, which means, listen, you need to keep on believing in God. Even when it gets tough, even when you go through these dark days, keep on believing God. And not only keep on believing in God, you need to keep on believing in me as well. And then he gives them this hope that's placed out before them, and he says to them, listen, in my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you so, but I go away to prepare a place for you. And if I go away, I'll come again and receive you to myself, so that where I am, there you might be also, and you know the way that I am going. I'm going to my Father's house. I'm preparing a place for you. Now, in the King James, I think it maybe talks about mansions. In the New American Standard, it talks about a dwelling place. Probably the best translation really is rooms. And that is, in my Father's house are many rooms. And they would have understood that probably better than we would in our day. But in that day, families seldom lived more than 5 miles apart. So most of them never lived went anywhere 25 miles away from their homes. And so a lot of times in that day, the most frequent thing is that when a man had a number of sons, those sons didn't go out 20 miles away and build a house. They built rooms right onto the house itself. And they lived with the father. There was this huge connection, this intimate relationship that went on between the family that was there. And the best way that I can think to even illustrate it to you was, some of you have been to Guatemala. And if you went over to the city of Antigua, Antigua is known as a walled city. But if you go to that city, it's not walled around, but you'll find that there are blocks that are all walled in. The whole block's got walls all the way around the block, and there are big doors for guys to ride in the Spaniard days with their horses mounted on them, and then there are smaller doors for humans to walk into. But when you walk inside that room there's a huge quad there, and what you've later found out is that families lived next to each other. Children married, and then they made their home there within that quad, and it went all the way around the block like that. And that, I think, is what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, when you go to heaven, there's not going to be this little mansion on a hillside. You're going to be closely connected with the Father. And I think that's why he uses these kinds of words, that in my Father's house are many rooms. It's going to be a wonderful place. Well, when he gets done, he goes, and you know the way that I'm going. And Thomas says, Lord, we don't know the way. How can we know the way? How can we know this way to get to the Father? How can we know the way to get to this home that you're talking about? And Jesus said to them, I am the way and the truth and the life. And no man comes to the Father but by me. If you want to go to heaven, if you want to go to that place where you hear those words, well done, then I'm the way. You need to follow me down this road. I know it's going to be hard. Stay on the road. Follow me to the end. If you've ever been to a strange town, in the days before we had, smartphones and maps and things like that we could dial up, well, you either were good at reading maps, or if you're a guy, you swallowed your pride and finally stopped and asked someone, can you tell me how to get from here to there? And so Imagine you're in a strange town and you catch a guy on the corner and you say to him, I need to go to this place. And he says, that's going to be easy. Listen, you need to go down the road, a couple of blocks, and then you need to take a right. You need to go past 3 other blocks, and then you need to take a left, turn right at the next block, and then you're going to come to a Y. And when you get to this Y, you need to take a right at the 3rd street that is there. And if you move on down, you'll see exactly where you need to go. Well, if that was you or me, I can almost tell you that about halfway through, I'd be completely lost. But what if that guy said to him, listen, I can give you the directions, but why don't you just come with me? And I'll lead you there. And you'll be able to find your place very easily. That is what Jesus is talking about. Jesus said, listen, there are a lot of detours, there are a lot of turns that are going to go on this road that leads you to heaven, but what you need to do is you need to follow me. I'll lead you there. Put your hand in my hand. I'm not going to tell you how to get there. I'm not going to draw you a roadmap. I'll lead you. I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age. So this evening, where are you? Are you that person that needs the home and the promise of that home and to have a relationship with Jesus Christ? Or are you the prodigal that's come back and you need to be home? The invitation is, why don't you take Jesus' hand this evening and follow him, and he will take you home to heaven, where you hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of my Father's heaven. Won't you come while together we stand and sing if you need to do so.